Ah! How did you get in my house? Oh, you're here for that. Well, still don't know how you got in my house, but follow me. We're gonna take a left here. No, over here. Like that's left or right, come on. Okay, could you stand on that light over there while I get everything ready? Alright, so I got a helmet for you and me, and if you could put this on. So what these helmets will do is it will take you to my mind so I can show you these builds, and so I can like fly and everything. And I actually have a book that has all the things we'll be doing today. So let me read that off to you. Water tunnel for the Failing Four. You already know it's for the Failing Four. Mushroom farm for Gadd. Elevators for the stack of rooms that Jay made. And a penguin farm for Gadd. Very impractical, but you know, it's a fun thing. And also an Endermen farm, an EXP farm for all of Failing Four. Okay, now that I read off everything, I'm going to flip this lever, and on the count of 3, you will be sent to my mind. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now that you're here, let me explain a few things. I'm making this video because I initially wanted to build the designs I'm about to show you in the TFF server. So I asked Failboat if I could, but he said he wanted to keep the build in the server, stuff that was built by them. This is why I'm making a video surrounding these builds, and my goal is to get at least one of these designs built and used in the server. And that's why I'm going to start off with the design I'm most confident with, the water tunnel. And before I get started, I just want to say that if any members of the Failing Four are watching this and want to build any of the designs I show off in the server, shoot me a Discord DM. I'll basically send you a schematic file of the build, which you can use to set up a 3D blueprint in your world so you can place it wherever you want and build it perfectly. Before I show you what the water tunnel does, I need to explain the sponge pet. So, if you haven't seen the most recent Failing Four stream, you probably won't know what the sponge pet is and how it is one of the craziest inventory pets to exist. There are a lot of things that this thing does, and it can place water, it can drain water in a 32 by 32 by 32 scale, which is 32,768 blocks of water. I have a feeling that's not intentional, because that is also the limit for the /fill command. So the first thing you'll notice is that I can walk on water. This is one of the properties of the sponge pet. If I press space, I hop up, which seems to be a block higher than before. Something I discovered is that if you place a lily pad, you can actually go 2 blocks higher. What I'm standing on right now is what I call the pseudo-platform, because it's kind of a platform, but it's not in a lot of ways. When you press space or shift on the pseudo-platform, you're able to climb up and down, similar to how you would with scaffolding in newer versions of Minecraft. As you can see, I'm able to go 2 blocks high on the lily pad, and I'm able to go about 1 block high without the lily pad. And if you look closely, you might be able to notice how every time I land, my height is different. This is because the pseudo-platform has an inertia kind of physics thing. The harder you fall, the further down you go. And even when I walk off of a full block, I fall down a little bit. If you watched the latest stream, you may remember the time Failboat landed on some flowing water while having the sponge pet, and gaining a lot of speed.
So this
Please
is just
don't
like
put
let
it
me.
like that.
Yo! Oh! So...
This is because of the pseudo-platform's ability to generate speed. Right now, you see me walking out on the water, and if I jump, I land higher up. But something cool happens whenever I do that while sprinting forward. I get a little bit of a boost there, do you see that? That's basically what happened to Failboat in the stream, but there's a lot more to it. What happened to Failboat is that he fell from a certain amount of blocks into the side of the pseudo-platform, and was able to get a boost from it. So whenever I saw this happen, I immediately was wondering what would happen if I had blocks over my head. And so this is why I made the water tunnel. So this is a water tunnel. I have this sponge pad in my hand. I'm gonna hold sprint, space, and forward all at the same time. As you can see, we peak at like 50 blocks a second. It's pretty good, but what if I told you you could go faster? Way faster. Let me introduce to you the slime boots. The slime boots are something that Failboat's been using for a very long time, but what do they do that makes this method of travel so much better? So if you remember how they work, you gain speed whenever you bounce. That does some very interesting things. These slime boots have a very interesting feature, which I call bounce mode. Whenever you fall from 2 or more blocks, or use the slime sling in any capacity, you enter bounce mode. Bounce mode can stay activated infinitely unless you stop moving. I think one of the most useful and accessible examples of bounce mode is for sprint jumping. Whenever I sprint jump, you see my speed is pretty normal, but whenever I use bounce mode a bit, and I start moving, I go significantly faster. But now that I've come to a complete stop, I'm back to normal. Bounce mode also affects how fast you go when sprint jumping on water. Failbot accidentally activated bounce mode when he went into the water in that clip. And so that is how he gained the speed that he did. And there's actually a point in the stream where he's in the ocean, on top of the water, and in bounce mode, and he's going very fast. But there's one weird thing that happens. He comes to a complete stop, but is able to continue bounce mode even after. This is because the pseudo-platform is not an actual platform. The slime boots only stop you if you stop on solid ground. Since the pseudo-platform is not something Tinker's Constructs recognizes, it thinks you're still in the air, and you haven't stopped moving yet. So I have the slime boots on, and I'm holding the sponge bit, and I'm gonna go into bounce mode, and go into this water tunnel. Let's see how fast I go. So that peaked at like 168 blocks a second. I just traveled 2,000 blocks in 17 seconds. If you're gonna make a water tunnel to go somewhere, it's unlikely that it's gonna be just a straight line. You're bound to have a corner or two. If you're coming from a long travel at very fast speed, but you want to, at the entrance of the tunnel, still be able to aim straight without messing up the incoming travel, what I would recommend doing is having a trap door right here and having a little room for a boat. And what boats do is that they're able to set your view to whatever angle the boat is facing. Now I'm in the boat, I press shift, I fall down, I get bounced, and I'm able to go under the trap door. And vice versa, if I'm going through, I will get stopped by that trap door. This is because whenever I'm going forward, I'm pressing space, so my head is on the ceiling, but my character is also small enough to fit underneath the trap door at this entrance. I think a common question now would be, how do you reasonably make these really long tunnels in a survival world with limited resources? And what I'd recommend is converting cobblestone to slabs. You can turn 3 of them into 6 slabs. There are 4 slabs you need. Bottom is to support the water, the sides are also to support the water, and the top is to keep you down, and if you're going straight, you shouldn't have to worry about falling off the sides. And what I'd recommend doing to get the water in the tunnel is simply placing down a source block with your sponge pet. And even though I'm in creative mode, I've tested this in survival. Placing down water with the sponge pet doesn't take up durability in the sponge pet. And once you reach the end of your tunnel, all you have to do is place a torch, which will update the water and cause a chain reaction. And since you can stand at the same level, even on really low flowing water, this will work the exact same as it would if it was filled with sources of water. You also might remember the magma cube pet, which let Failboat walk on lava. And so if you're wondering, yes, this does work in the nether. Alright, so next up we got the mushroom farm for Gabb. And I'll start off by saying that this is more of an edited design of a farm originally made by Ilmingo. So how it works is that the mushrooms grow on these lines of podzol, and the observer sees whenever a mushroom grows there, and it makes this piston pull this block out from under the mushroom. The mushroom will then break, and the observer will see it again and have the piston push the block back. And this happens really fast. And as you can see, something else happened. The observer above this observer sees the observer pulse, and so this one pulses afterwards and powers this dropper. Then this observer will see that dropper get powered and make a chain down to this block and around into the rail that this hopper minecart is on. The hopper minecart will then go down this line of rails, and it will pick up the mushroom through the block. And I'll demonstrate it here. You can see all 3 of them got picked up. And there's definitely the possibility that Gabb might not want to build something like this, but there's still some good knowledge to be had regarding the pattern I'm using for these mushrooms. So firstly, podzol, and I think mycelium as well, are both blocks that mushrooms can grow on despite whatever light level they're in. That means they can grow in a very bright area. And secondly, I've kind of made the range of the mushroom visible. Every mushroom is looking for other mushrooms of its color in this range, and if there are more than 4 mushrooms of its color in this range, it won't grow any more mushrooms. And so using this pattern makes it so that no mushrooms are able to see more than 4 within their range. And in survival, especially in 1.12, you might be wondering how to get podzol. I was watching back in some of my edited videos, and I actually found a time where Failboat went through a taiga biome with podzol in it. It's at -900, -500. The other issue is that you need Silk Touch to obtain podzol. But something else I found is that in Season 2, Episode 8, whenever TFF fought that underground boss, one of the things Failboat got was the nightly pick, which had Silk Touch on it. The only issue with that is that that item currently does not exist in the TFF world because it exists in Failboat's backup account inventory. But I tested to make sure if it works, and yes, you can get podzol with that nightly pick with Silk Touch. And something else to note is that you can get sticky pistons using the modded slime ball types, so it should be very easy to make them. So next up is the elevator system for Jay's bedroom stack that he just made. On the left I have the older design I used, which is much slower, but it's really cool how it works. So the first thing to notice is that I'm using these blocks called the blue air cloud. They make you go up really fast. So I'm using these blocks to my advantage here. You press this button and a trapdoor gets closed up here. And you press the button on this side to go down, and it makes this gelatin channel start flowing. And I'll explain these gelatin channels a bit better in the penguin farm, but basically, whenever they're powered, they stop flowing. I make them flow up here so that you don't fall through them. And so how those trapdoors get activated is a pretty cool process. This design makes an item get shot out by this dropper, and this cloud can actually shoot up items. I'm using a gelatin channel right here to push it into the cactus. I have a trap door up here stopping the item so that it falls down into the tripwire because on its way up it actually travels too fast to activate the tripwire hook, so I have to stop it. The tripwire then activates a pulse extender, which deactivates this redstone torch, which closes this trap door. On this side, I have items fall down. It deactivates the redstone torch on the other side. But that's a really slow design, but I made a better one. As you can see, it's a lot faster. And on this side, I'm no longer using the gelatin streams, because the trapdoors are much flatter and a lot more simple. And so how this thing works is it uses chains of observers and droppers. Just like in the mushroom farm, this observer activates this dropper, and this observer can see that dropper get powered, and so it creates a chain up into this pulse extender right here, which does the same thing with the trapdoor like it did in the other design. On this side I have them go down with an observer looking at this dropper, so that whenever you want to go one floor down, it closes both trapdoors, so if you want to, you can go back down through if you made a mistake or something and want to go down further. There are a lot of different chains you can have using observers. You can use dispensers and droppers, you can use doors, you can use powered rails and the gelatin streams. You can use hoppers, because when hoppers get powered, they become locked. That doesn't let items flow through them, and observers can also see that. You can also use redstone dust, and you can use like note blocks if you want to. And you have some weird ones, like the glowstone lamp chain. Whenever they get pulsed by an observer, they actually stay on for longer than the pulse of the observer. So whenever the lamp turns off, this observer sees it again. It just makes it take a bit longer to go all the way down. These pistons are just really strange. There's also a really cool chain of sticky pistons and redstone blocks that you can use, which has a really cool feature whenever you unpower it. My goal with this was to make it as minimalistic as possible. I didn't want anything to really be intruding on the space of the room and also the space of the outside, and I think I did a pretty good job. Next up is the penguin farm, and you might be wondering, why did I make a penguin farm? Well, the story is, in the Season 2 finale, Gadd just started killing all the penguins.
Oh man, penguins just accept their death when you hit them, you know?
They don't run.
Yeah, they don't run! They're just like, ow. I kinda got 2 stacks of 64 feathers.
Oh my god.
Should I stop?
So did Jay as well.
Sayonara, penguin. I'm just killing penguins.
I should mention that there are penguins in the dungeon, so...
Oh, I'm coming!
He made this joke around the penguin pillow place.
I should start a pillow industry, you know? It would be amazing. I could call it the penguin pillow place.
Don't name the pillow after what it's made out of.
Come on down to the PPP, the penguin pillow place.
So I was like, you know what? I want to make a farm for these guys. The first big thing is how I thought these guys' spawning mechanics worked. What I initially thought is that they spawn naturally. And since I was thinking they would spawn naturally, I was thinking of how I would farm them from that standpoint. And I was worried because these don't behave the same way as hostile mobs. They spawn differently, like friendly mobs. And so my original idea was I would just spam the creeper pet down there, because the lower you go, the higher chance a spawn will succeed. So I was thinking, oh, I'd have the platform down there. Also, how would I spawn-proof the area? That's where the glowstone comes in. Well, over here it melts it, and mobs can't spawn in water, so I was thinking, you know what, I'm gonna melt the top of this whole place. I'm just gonna go across and melt this entire island. So with that platform, I was gonna use a flying machine to push them off into an area where I would kill them if I just flick this switch. Whee! And my first killing method, the penguin will get shot into this little water stream and into this chest, which is slightly smaller than a normal block, and into this part of lava right here, and their item will get picked up by this minecart hopper. There are also some times where the lava would kill the item, so I'm like, well, I gotta find some way to do that, and yeah, sometimes the hopper minecarts don't pick up the feather. And I also had a cool collection method where, if you didn't know, a chest minecart can actually pick up items from physical hopper blocks. So it does a cool thing where it's going to unload the stuff, and since there are items going through this hopper, the computer detects it and makes this rail not power until everything is gone. So, you know, I thought like any mob would, it would respawn naturally. So I killed all of the penguins, and I realized the penguins aren't spawning anymore. So since I realized that they couldn't spawn naturally anymore, I was like, well, I have to make a breeding farm now. And if you didn't know, penguins can be bred by raw fish. Look how cute that thing is. Your head is like 2/3 your body mass. Welcome to the penguin pillow place. There are a few things you need to know, is that it takes 20 minutes for a baby animal to grow into an adult. There's a cooldown for the time it takes for you to like breed these guys, and that's 5 minutes. What also is 5 minutes is the time it takes for an item to despawn. So this thing is centered around this item timer right here, where this dropper shoots out an item onto this pressure plate. And so whenever the item disappears, a lot of things happen. First of all, it kind of goes into this delay right here, and then it dispenses another item, because what this thing does is it pushes you around with these gelatin streams. You're able to right click all the penguins in here with the raw fish. It would be kind of bad to make it an exactly 5 minutes timer, because there would be times where you start to miss the penguins cooldown, like you're gonna pass them before their cooldown ends because human error. If you ever have issues with that, you can just extend it by this pattern. I also have note blocks here so that you can hear whenever the item goes away, because it's 5 minutes, you're probably gonna be doing something else. Whenever you flick this lever, it will dispense an item and start this cycle. What it also does is, whenever the pressure plate becomes unpowered, this redstone dust turns off, and this torch turns on, and goes down here, and turns this torch on, so that the torch above it turns off, and lets this thing start flowing, because of the powering mechanic that I talked about earlier. You get yourself in place by coming here, and do a little hop against this chest, and there's a string up here for this thing, which is for this. This torch right here makes this dropper drop an item through this block, and so this thing makes you go around this cycle again. It makes this thing flow again. It has a failsafe so that whenever you're going and the item disappears, it doesn't drop the item right away. The piston moves that block out of the way until you come back and hit that string. And you can hit this as many times as you want, but right when you come back, you're gonna hop up and that piston will go again. What happens with the penguins is whenever you go around and breed them, since there are so many of them, they're pushed to one side or the other of these steel bars. Wherever the baby comes out from, it falls right through into the water stream, and there are torches here so that the water doesn't turn into ice, and they're put into these gelatin streams. And the reason I have these gelatin streams here is because they tend to bounce less, so they're able to fit into here. They get pushed into those blue air clouds down there. Turn this thing on, I'm going to demonstrate. You hear the note blocks, and there's going to be an item dispensed, and I'm going to go through. Well, let's look at what's happening with the baby penguins. You see they're bouncing very not much. But right now they're in the blue air clouds, and since they're constantly being pushed up into the glass, they aren't moving. You might be wondering why I have them here, and it's because whenever they grow up, their hitbox will be pushed up through the glass, and since they're through the glass, they can go through up into these streams, since they're being shot up by these clouds, and so that's basically what will happen. So I guess I'll talk about what this thing is right here. When I flick this, a signal goes down around here into this dropper right here. The observer sees it, and Zero takes this piston and it pulls an air cloud right there, so that whenever the penguins go into here, they'll get shot up into this stream and they'll be pushed into this room since they're small enough for that to happen. I'm also going to talk about the automatic way. I have netherrack with a minecart hopper in it with fire on top. Whenever the items drop, whenever the penguins die, the minecart hopper is able to pick them up before they get burned, and so this is a completely lossless way of collecting the items. Since you're going to be in survival and not be able to fly around, I made a little path that you can go to for whenever you have room filter on. I have a very fast self-closing door because whenever you have a bunch of penguins in here, you don't want them escaping, but you want to be able to get in. There's probably better ways of doing that, like having a ladder or something, but this was the first thing I came up with. So I'll put some penguins in here, just as an example. They'll get shot up into this room. You want the looting pet for this, because you'll get significantly more feathers. And what you want to do is you want to have them come over here, and then you want to close those trapdoors. Whenever you're in survival, you can break things while holding a sword, and those gelatin streams can break in one hit. I just wanted to put something to keep the penguins in, and also make sure that you don't accidentally hit those. With the looting pet, you just go, and I have the solstice sword right now, which is something you can get from the inventory pets mod, but it is only something that you can get during the holiday season, which is already over. It's not something you can craft, but it might be something that you can get from the Illuminati pet. Oh, and you'll see over here, you just heard the note blocks. That means these guys' cooldowns are ready to go again. The one thing that I kind of hate about the breeding farm is that it requires a lot of waiting with a lot of mobs at one time, and with servers, even the 1.12 servers can be pretty stable. Entity lag is always an issue. The more entities you have, the laggier your server is going to get. So while we're waiting for the penguins to be done, I want to show you these gelatin streams a bit more. They're really cool because they're like half pieces of water basically, and you can use them in a lot of ways. One of my favorite things is that they can be used on walls and like under blocks in a bunch of different ways. That one's getting powered by this redstone. And all you have to do to make them is to put a congealed slime block in a furnace, and you'll get 3 gelatin streams. I also have these steel bars here with these slabs on top, so that whenever you go through, you don't bounce around. What happens without those is whenever you go through, you'll go up against them and kind of jump up a bit. I'm also going to flick off the farm. And since you're in survival, you might be wondering how you get the penguins in here, and I'll be discussing this later. Okay, we got the first batch popping out here. They're going into the fire. That's a lot of pengies. Okay, we got our second batch here, and this time they're being filtered into the killing room. Bring them over with the fish. And they'll see you and they'll walk over here, and you're like, alright, now you can't escape, and then you betray all of them. I got a stack of feathers. You also might be wondering how to get the fish. I made a really cool addition. And so what this is an upwards facing AFK fish farm. This is the basic AFK fish farm for 1.12. You just hold right click, and the tripwire detects the bobber, and the trapdoor opens, so you click the sign. Whenever you get a fish, the bobber goes down, the tripwire deactivates, and this redstone torch turns on, so this thing flips back up, so you're able to bring back the fish. My issue was that there was no way to fit that right here, so I spent a long time making an upwards facing one. How it basically works is that you're constantly going to be pressing this button that tells the machine that you're using it, so that it will start. And all you have to do to use it is go right here and look up and look at the bottom half of the button and just hold right click. Now I have a lot going on here, and I still don't fully understand how I made this to work, but you can see right there how that works. You can see it gets into tiny loops, but it will always get back on its feet in a pretty short amount of time. So that button is constantly making a pulse go over to this trap door, but that pulse gets cut off whenever you have the bobber in the water. These pistons move blocks out of the way. So whenever you have the bobber in the water, this thing will pull down. Whenever your bobber gets pulled down by a fish, that whole circuit activates, and it lets this thing go so that you will pull back the fish in time to get it. This is my starting design without that left side, and as you can see, there are times where the fish will just get missed. As you can see right there, it took too long for me to reel back the fishing rod. But yeah, I'm surprised this thing barely works, because if you just go back a little bit, shift to the edge of this block, you'll see that it actually doesn't work. Because your bobber gets hit, but because you are just enough in this block, it actually works. So the idea is to get more fish while you're waiting that 5 minutes. You don't directly get the items from the fishing. It goes into the hopper, into this chest. And I would recommend the enchantment you would want would be Lure 3 and not Luck of the Sea, because Luck of the Sea ups your chance of getting a treasure item, but Lure 3 just downs the time it takes to get a fish, and therefore you would get more of the fish you need. Okay, so I was able to figure out a way to get penguins into the pod up there, and it's involving minecart transportation. What you do is you find a penguin in your area. You want to find at least 2, and you attract them with the raw fish. You want to have a little trail up to here, and you're going to put an open trap door right here, and they're going to think that that is a closed trap door, and they're going to try and walk over it, but they'll just fall down. So I'll get a few in here. You want to close the trap door so they'll stop bouncing around. And so now they're right here, and so it's a fail-proof thing, because the minecart is only able to go back around whenever you have a penguin in it. Because what it does is it uses an activator rail, which whenever a minecart goes over it and it's powered and there's a mob inside, the mob gets dispensed from it. Even though the penguin is only a block tall, whenever it leaves the minecart, it goes up a bit, and so it's able to activate this string. So I use this right here to make sure that the minecart can only go whenever a penguin is in there. And right here, I have a system for whenever it goes back to make it manually just cycle through again. So right here, you'll see it happen. The penguin gets pushed off the block that it dispenses on, and the minecart is able to go back around. And now that there's no penguins, you can see the repeater tried to power the block, but there's no block there. This is kind of useless to have right here, but you would use this to bring them up with a minecart over here. I built up a little trail. It's ready to drop the penguins here and bring the minecart back, and it should loop. I have 4 penguins in the queue here, and so I'm going to activate this and we're going to watch it go. So unfortunately you do need a few powered rails. You see there, that worked. The minecart's going over. It's going to fall down. It's going to make it back up. So this will work until all the penguins are gone. Alright, I believe that's our 4th penguin right there. They're all kind of together right now. You just have to kind of move them around so they'll split up. Whenever you do this, you're going to have penguins in here, and you're putting them in here so you can breed them up, so you'll get more penguins in here over time. You want to have carpets on the bottom so that the babies do not fall through. You can easily remove the carpets afterward. But a much simpler way of doing this is having this farm closer to the ground and doing that trapdoor thing just up here by leading them from down there just to right here. It's a lot easier, but it's a lot less cool than this. Alright, so next up is the Enderman farm. And I'll start off with saying that just like the mushroom farm, this isn't a farm entirely designed by me. This is more so an edited version. This was originally made by Nimbon, and actually it was for a version ahead of this, but it works even better in this version. If you look at the original, there are leaves around the spawning platform, and that is to take advantage of what is called pack spawning. And so whenever the game finds a place to spawn a mob, it checks in different directions to spawn more mobs of that mob, and it can spawn 1 to 4. Whenever it looks at a block that it can't spawn a mob on, it still looks around to find other places, and that can include spawnable blocks. And so having those leaves around it up the spawning chances. But in 1.12, which is before this change in spawning, the air is something that spawns are still checked on and stuff, and so pack spawns don't need leaves to happen. Even when they're out here, Endermen can still from a pack spawn on here. I also made a lighting system, and just like I already showed, there's this instant transmission kind of thing here. You flick a lever and the lights turn off instantly. I have carpets on string around here, and I'll explain why I have carpets on string, but right here they're to keep the Enderman from falling off. And unlike the original design right here, I'm using those blue air clouds again. With a mini HUD, I can see the Enderman has 40 health, and that's twice as much as the player does. I was trying to think of ways to have them take damage and get to a really low health from here to over here. And so I took a look at some of the modded blocks, including the magma. The block of night metal actually causes you to take damage on it. There's also this thing called the punji stick. And what the punji stick does is that it gives you slowness and makes you take damage. This thorn thing kind of does the same amount of damage. But the Endermen don't take that much damage by those things. And so what I tried to do instead was make them take fall damage, and since these shoot you up really high when they land, they take enough fall damage to be at 1 heart. You can kill them very easily, even with a wooden sword. And I'll show that off right now. So you can see the Endermen down there, and they're getting shot up by that block. They're falling down into it. And I'll explain why they come over here. You can see the majority of them are at 1 out of 40. And there's a special pet I'm using called the Pixie Pet, which gives you double the XP. Whenever you kill a mob, that mob drops double what it would normally drop. How this farm works is that the Endermen from all the way over there see this Endermite, and they don't like the Endermite, and they try to kill the Endermite. They just go over and try to kill it, but they fall down, because this is a cool trick used in a lot of mob farms. Mobs see trapdoors as closed trapdoors, and so whenever they try to walk over open ones, that's what they're thinking, and so they just fall down very easily. We have carpet on string, and that stops them from spawning, but also stops them from teleporting or standing over the void on carpets on string. We also have the Endermite under carpet. They are not able to hit the Endermite, and I'd recommend watching Nimbon's video on how to build this thing, because there are a lot of aspects on this that he explains much better than me. There's a red line on my hitbox. That red line is your eye level. If the Enderman can see that, they'll see you, and since you're standing on a daylight sensor and your head is mainly behind the trapdoor in front of you, it's at an angle where they cannot see you when you're hitting them, and so they will not get aggravated at you and you won't get hit at all. I have hoppers underneath these carpet, and I have carpet on top so that the XP won't get stuck in the hoppers. The drops go into over here, and I don't have it into a double chest because I can't really take anything out of that since there's no space underneath. We're at the very bottom of the void, and so I can't place a hopper under the chest to get them out. So I just have them in droppers already. Whenever your hoppers get filled up, you can simply have them get dispensed. I'm going to remove all my XP with a wooden sword, and the Pixie Pet, I'm going to go from level 0 to level 30. Alright, I just hit level 30. But there's a cool pet called the Enchanting Table Pet. This thing is actually way better than the Enchanting Table itself because it doesn't require lapis. It only requires lapis nuggets as its food source. But what it also does, you put your item in it, and you can get level 30 enchantments without needing any bookshelves. All I want to say is RIP Jay's Enchanting Table room, because this is so much better. Look at those guys go. That's strange. So there's a strange thing that happens sometimes whenever you turn off the farm. I had an issue where they would just stop moving towards the Endermite whenever you turn off the farm. Like the last Enderman there would just keep going, and so I made these things that have tripwires that would push them ahead. Once again, I would highly recommend watching Nimbon's video on it. He covers a lot of things and how to build it and how to get the endermite and the minecart and all that. Although I will say when you make the endermite, you probably want to make a little room so that it doesn't escape and you don't get shot off. Okay, now that I've gone through everything that I've listed, I'm going to end this thing off with a few quality of life designs and some other knowledge. So the first thing is blaze farm efficiency. I know TFF has a blaze spawner that they use, and they've kind of kept it how it's naturally been spawned. For a blaze spawner to have maximum efficiency, you want a 9x9, and then it spawns in 3 vertical layers. You want to have space for those 3. So to spawn, you want to make sure you have a space for the blaze's head to go, and you want to have them go low enough so that they don't cancel out any spawns on the bottom by being there. And I also have a bunch of buttons on the bottom so that whenever you fight the blazes, the ground doesn't catch on fire. I have another version over here that uses the gelatin streams, and so this is more of an automatic farm, and I think it's pretty cool because you can put those gelatin streams in the nether. They don't steam up or anything, and they damage the blazes, so you can just kill the blazes down here. There isn't any light down here getting into the farm, and under here I have hoppers going to a chest. Alright, so next thing I have self-closing doors, and these are an alternative to having pressure plates in front of your doors, and I thought this would be kind of useful to have. It's just a cool thing, I guess. So this is how it looks, and this is a slower version, but you can extend it infinitely. Just this part, you know, as far as you want. I designed it to be able to fit underneath the failing 4 house, and this is kind of how it looks in the front. This redstone can all be underground. I'd recommend having hoppers or dispensers or droppers if you don't want to use the gelatin streams. Whenever you're building this, if one of the pistons are freaking out, all you have to do is break the door on whatever side it's happening on and place the block so that it's up 1 block above the piston. Then you place the door back and everything should work. And in case you want a fast closing door, you can do an easy one, a very compact one like this. This is a really fast one right here. And what's happening is the observer is able to send a signal through this block and around the redstone into here, and this redstone is powering this block and powering this piston through quasi-connectivity. It's weird stuff. And then the block gets pushed over here, and whenever the block gets set in place, this redstone torch is able to power through that block and around to these pistons. Back here I have the fastest door that you can go through, and so I have a redstone block set in place. Whenever it gets pushed up, the door will open and the observer will immediately detect it and push the redstone block out of the way. And so this is what it looks like. You can barely get through it in time, but over here, at least from what I could get, the absolute fastest door that you can have. I also have a self-closing door right here, and there are no observers. I'm gonna make a video on this one, I think, because I'm very proud of it. So, guess how it works in the comments if you want. Guess how it works. I can open this door with my mind. I'm just kidding. I have the Pingit Pet. It's a Pingit Pet door. The observer sees it, and it's really cool. It's a magic door, and you can just a pulse extender and make sure you can get through the door. One of my favorite doors. It's so cool. So I know the Failing 4 has the Illuminati Pet and the Brewing Stand Pet. They put their items they get into a chest, and so I made a little system. I've made 2 different versions, and the second one is a lot smaller than this. But this is if you want to just be able to walk into it. Step in here, and you right click your thing, and it goes into hoppers, it goes into a dropper, and shot into this blue air cloud and shot up very fast into the roof where it hits the top and gets pushed by the gelatin stream into the hopper. And this is really cool because in survival you can just hold right click for this thing and your potions will just be collected. You can also activate the Illuminati pet in here. I don't know what that is. Cool. So I made a second version where you can, it's a lot smaller because you're already above the hoppers that go into the chests. You right click so you can get up into a minecart, and whenever you get out of the minecart, you go up a little bit. And I have a string up here and an observer looking right at me, and that will just push me out. Why didn't I do a slime block? So over here, this is a really, like, extremely, just, why would you ever do this, very impractical thing, where you place water with the sponge pet and it turns it into a water bucket. You put your buckets up in here. Now it's a water bucket. I think this is the smallest version you can make, and it works. And then there's also a one wide version. I have a sign in the middle, and you can hear the sound it makes, but there's no water being placed anywhere. What you can do is just go back and forth, because placing water doesn't take durability out of your sponge pet. And so you can just do this if you really want to, but that doesn't make any sense. So now that we're edging more into the knowledge side of stuff, I'm going to talk to you about the Pingit pet for a bit. So the Pingit pet has a 15 by 15 by 15 cube radius. You can see there are diamonds over there, and I'm right clicking right now, and I'm not detecting anything unless I walk one block over or one block over here, and you can there are different sound things. There's that sound happens whenever there's an ore in a direct up or down or cardinal direction from the bottom half of you in your range. And there are different sounds for different ores. That also works for modded things. Over here you have the higher pitched. You also have lower pitches, and that includes the nether quartz and the aether. So now we're on to one of my favorite things. If you remember, in Season 2, Episode 11, Jay discovered that you could dupe the Arctic fur block with the looting pet, and so I went through every modded block in the mod pack, because Failbit actually sent me the mod pack that he uses, and I discovered for the Aether, you can dupe the Zanite and Gravitite ore. There's an Ambrosium ore, but you can't dupe that one. And so as you can see, I mine this with the looting pet. I get 2 back, but if I just mine it without Silk Touch, I get 2 of those. But with the Gravitite ore, you can mine it with or without the Silk Touch, and it dupes anyway, which is really cool, I think. And the Twilight Forest has a few too. Yeah, so whenever Jay found out that Arctic fur dupe thing, this is Arctic fur right here. It's within the group of all of these things that I've put here that can be duped. And over here are the things that can be duped with Silk Touch. And over here, and this is only with Twilight Forest logs, if you use the looting pet when mining these logs, you just get 2 pieces of charcoal. It's the weirdest thing. And also here, there's a one-time dupe. It's Uber Soil, and I think this is from nearly the end of the Twilight Forest. And if I mine it, you just get dirt. Even with Silk Touch, I just get dirt. And I think the favorite thing to dupe are the fireflies and cicadas, because you can just hit them and get more. I now have almost a stack of fireflies, and I have a feeling that Phil will probably not want this to be like abused or anything, unless it's like for these castle doors. They're really cool because they like do really cool flowy stuff. Down here you have the block of night metal, which is what you use to make the block and chain that Jay and Faris spent like half of the finale episode farming resources for. But hey, I guess Jay can get his armor back, you know? Oh, and something that's really cool that I haven't seen TFF use, this is the uncrafting table. And I haven't really tested everything in here, but there is, you can basically put an item here and get the items back for it. And you can also use it to craft. So there's this really weird thing. If you put the Scepter of Life Journey in, which I know Jay had at one point, I think, you can just get a bunch of fermented spider eyes. It does cost experience. I wonder what else you could do this with. I also realized that you could probably use some really cheap block like the Naga stone pillar as a structure for your water tunnel. So I just wanted to make an easy way to dupe things kind of efficiently. So all you have to do here is hold right click and left click. So I'm just gonna be placing immediately after I break. And you don't even really need obsidian here. You just need like some block to put it on really. Next up I have how to beat the double wither that's been left at the castle. I have 2 pets that are very useful and I think they could use. So I'm just gonna spawn in some withers right now. I'll kill them as fast as I can. But firstly, purplishish cow pet is something I think that should be used a lot more often, because it gives you regeneration consistently and it's very nice. It does cost diamond nuggets though, but it is very useful. And another thing to mention is that the creeper pet doesn't make you immune to wither explosions. First thing I'll do, okay, so my frames just die here, so I'm just gonna tell you what to do. When fighting the wither, you want to grab their attention by hitting them once, and so then they'll be following you in the sky, and you can use the creeper pet to hit them while they're following you in the sky. Once they get lower than half health, they'll come down and be closer to you, and so at that point, you can finish them off a lot faster with the creeper pet, or if you want to play it up, you can use a sword. If you plan on using a sword, I'd recommend pressing F3 and B so you can see the hitbox of the wither. Also, if you use the looting pet, you'll have a very high chance of getting 2 wither stars instead of just 1. The looting pet still has its effect when you kill the wither with the creeper pet. And also, don't worry about blowing up the wither stars because they're the one item that cannot be blown up. Alright, and there you see, there are 2 wither stars right there. This is for Failboat who just got the Elytra. I just want to kind of warn you for something that happened to me when I was using it, is whenever you use a rocket and go straight up and then immediately look down, so you kind of go into like an arch, that crashes my game for me. So I don't know if that would happen for you, but I'm just saying that just so it doesn't happen by surprise. Alright, it seems like that is all I have to show off today. You know, I hope it wasn't too boring. I already know this is going to be a very long video, but you know, I hope any Failing 4 members here have learned something that's going to be useful and helpful, and maybe they will build one of these things in their world. Stay warm and comfy out there.